look into your visionary, what's it called? A crystal ball? Is that what we call it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So if you're so what do you want to do? Do you want to be an enterprise CIO? Do you want to be do you want to be a venture capitalist? Which one are you?
Neither.
Okay, you're in the middle. You're just the counsel. So yeah, what are areas? What's your prediction? Like what's the major problem space area that is going to emerge or is emerging, and where's a room for a lot of innovation and disruption in this space of cloud native and APIs and connectivity.
Yeah, look, I'll pick one area um, that I have thought more about, but it's by no means. I think that you can probably have this type of thoughts on a lot of different areas too in our space. But one area that I find particularly needs to be addressed is the operator role. The infrastructure operator, infrastructure administrator's role, right? It doesn't feel like that's a persona and user that's been paid enough attention to. And yes, the stuff we're doing at CoreOS and now what's being picked up at Red Hat is interesting in terms of
I was about to say, I mean, this whole notion of operators was started at CoreOS, and you're head of product over there. So spend 10 seconds just defining operator and what exactly that means in this paradigm. Yeah.
Yeah, so the notion of an operator in the Kubernetes space is that it's agent that has intelligence in it that takes care of the automated operation aspects of a given service, right? So nowadays you have really strong operators actually built. For example, Elastic's operator on Kubernetes, talking about state, does a great job of taking Elastic, which is a pretty complex cluster database, and making sure that it's always balanced, the index is always maintained as nodes go up and down, right? That's good. But so that's what the concept of operators, and the way the name came about, I know the history because I was fortunate to be at CoreOS, is that the folks were saying, what should we call this thing? And someone said, well, what about an operator? Because it does the job of an operator. And somebody else said, well, yeah, that's how computers came about, because computer was a person, a role. You were a computer because you were computing stuff. And now an operator is, the person who used to operate. So I think that notion has a lot of promise because it's the tip of the iceberg, I think, on that, because intelligence and AI/ML and automation together, you can see now what kind of automated operations you can have, but all of the problems that we're talking about around distributed computing can be solved even better using AI/ML and using the notion of an operator and solving for the manual issues that still happen in our world in those environments.
So it's a good way to think about this is super trivially put is, okay, I'm trying to build a scalable web app for this, end of year sales campaign I'm doing, where people are going to come and buy widgets from my web store. I'm going to slice and dice this into 20 different components. One of them is I need to have a web app that's built in Angular, and it's going to need to do a bunch of things to scale out the web app. And below that is there's going to be some queuing mechanisms and some databases and things like that. So, and this is a question. So do we then need to have a role like an architect that comes and says, okay, and let's slice and dice all these 20 components, and now how they will live on Kubernetes will dictate the operator strategy we have. So there'll be an operator for this database, operator for this part of the Angular part, and this for this queue. Is that so? There'll be like many operators, and so is that the way to think about it?
Yes, I think that's a good way to think about it. Although I think that's still that's actually almost possible today. The components of it are there for you to start thinking that way today. I think when you couple that with real artificial intelligence, right? That's when you could get really interesting, right? So you can have these operators start actually predicting patterns. right? We're seeing, because systems usually don't just go down right away. They start sort of exhibiting problems that eventually make it go down. I'm seeing these patterns of issues across the board. That means that I need to bring up a new Kafka topic, right? And I'm now noticing the pattern of these types of alarms or these types of warnings go down. Therefore, I've resolved it properly. And I learned from that. That kind of artificial intelligence into the system using ML, which like because now you as a provider, I'm just picking Kafka as an example of Kafka, have access to all sorts of other organizations, Kafka organizations, right? So imagine if the Kafka operator leveraged data from every other organization that's running Kafka to tell you that you're exhibiting certain patterns of anomaly and give you, a cure. And of course, at the beginning, that will be something that a real person needs to take action on. But maybe the more the user takes action, the more confident you are that this type of thing can work. It can even be automated, right?
Interesting. So it's like what you're talking about is, okay, so there's data at rest, which is, you can develop algorithms in AI for data at rest and do predictive stuff based on the rest. But then there's data in motion, which is flowing through all the plumbing and the microservices that are all making RPC calls. That no one's really talking about, hey, let's look at that and apply AI at that level before we get to the rest, because that itself is value that will lead to so many different questions. Okay, cool.
Yeah, data in motion is in fact what Kong is in the business of. If you talk to Agi, our CEO, he will tell you a lot about data in motion, and that's
I had no
exactly
idea. Yeah.
Yeah.